Now let's do the finish painting. So here is the painting we're going to do, and the first thing we're going to do is the sky scene. Now we have to consider where our horizon is. It's here, so it's just below the middle, so we can put a mark here. So here's the middle and it's just below. I'm using a pen, should really use a pencil. Okay, now let's begin. So the first thing is to wet the whole sky surface. So just wetting the paper. And I'm using watercolor paper this time. There we go. You don't want a big puddle, a big pool of water, but you don't want lots of dry patches either. So we've done that. Now we're going to do the red. I think that's right. It needs to be a fairly weak mix. Let's check. That's perfect. So I don't want this paper too wet or too dry. So let's do a simple cloud. 1, 2, or it's beginning to dry. 3, and then let's have it going up. 4, and then one big more bump, and there we go, like that. Now lower down, I want the red to be fainter, so I'm just going to add some water to this, dab a little, and maybe it's fainter. Now I'm going to do the purple cloud. So this is like a distant soft cloud, and this purple cloud is a closer, darker one. So this needs to be a slightly thicker mix. Hopefully that will do. Now I'm going to begin about here, and I want this to, I didn't mix it very well, I can see red, and I'm going to start here. Whoops, you do get splatter. I could try and hide that, but I'm not going to bother. Now this is spreading very quickly, which means it's all too wet. My mixture's a bit too wet, the paper's a bit too wet. So it might be a good idea just to wait a little. Let it dry. So it starts off fat here and it gets thinner here. And I want most of this cloud below this red, because I'm going to paint or do a highlight using tissue, so not actually painting the highlight. There, that will do. Very, very simple. I might try and hide that. There we go. Yeah, that will do. So get my tissue, fold in half, half again, and half again, half again, and you want this edge. And then here we're going to do like this. Oh, and that's looking good. Now you want the red above, because we're removing the red paint and that's creating this white highlight. Oops, and if it gets dirty, just use another piece of clean tissue. Like that. Another space that's clean. So that is good enough. One more thing you can do, if you're feeling brave, is have streaks of white light coming down here. But you have to make sure the tissue is super clean and that it's not too wet, the paper, else you'll remove too much paint. So here we go, let's have a try. So the sun is here, so we've got rays coming down, across, and at this angle. So here we go, just a little, one, and then one more here, which is slightly down, like that. And I might do a touch more. This is a very tricky technique, so if you don't want to try it, don't bother. Now this has dried, or almost, so we're going to continue down with the red paint, but it's going to be for the river. Now if this is almost dry, you don't want to be adding paint above it, because you might get a cauliflower, a big ugly mark. So you want to make sure it's either still wet or it's dry, but nothing in between. So what I've done is I've wiped this with the tissue and it feels very dry, so I'm going to risk it. Normally I would wait a little bit longer, but because I'm doing this video and time is important, I'm just gonna carry on as quickly as I can. So what I'm going to do is strokes across. Now it is a good idea to get some scrap paper. Always have some next to your main piece of paper, and I'm going to practice on my scrap paper. Very, very important. Okay. Oh, that's beautiful. So I'm doing quick strokes, and that's giving me this speckled effect, which is going to look like sparkling water. And there we go. The first wash. Now let's paint a mountain in the distance. Now I've made this cloud too low, so if my mountain goes over this cloud, we're going to be able to see this cloud behind the mountain. So I should have made this cloud a bit higher. What I might be able to do is make the mountain lower. So because the mountain is in the distance, it needs to be a bluish colour and a weak mix. I'm going to add a little of this purple though, because I don't want pure blue, because it might not look quite so natural. I think that's right. We'll use our scrap paper, maybe a bit more water. Yep, I think that would be good, or that will be good. So here we go. I have to be careful, I don't want it too high. So it's just basically an M shape, but don't make the peaks the same height. It won't look natural. And then what I do is I'm going to soften the edges. I'm not going to do the whole mountain, because we're going to have something here and something here, so we don't need to paint the whole mountain. So I clean my brush and I dry it. I don't want it too wet, and then I'm coming up like this and softening that. Have to be careful that my brush is not too wet. And there we go. Let's leave that to dry. Now let's paint trees in the background next to the river. But first we have to decide on where our edges are going to be, because we this is difficult to explain, but I'm going to have one edge here and one edge here for the river, or maybe a bit wider. Oh, a lot wider, maybe here. So what I'm going to do is do my trees here, and the reason I want to know this distance is because I want to fade them a little here, because I don't need to paint them here, because here we're going to have foreground trees, and also here. Now one important point is we're going to have trees, or the bank of the river here and the bank of the river here. We don't want to make them the same size. We could do, and that would be okay, but it would be even better if one side was a bit longer. So I'm going to try and make this side the longer side and this side the shorter side. So this is longer and this is shorter. That's simple. So we're going to do our trees, so the mix needs to be stronger than these mountains. And because this mountain is very low, I haven't given myself much space for the trees. What I can do is I can lower the trees a little. We can hide this bit of the river behind the trees, so people won't realize that the river was this high. So let's mix up some blue. So it's still going to be mostly blue or bluish, a bluish purple. That's really what we want. And of course, have your piece of scrap paper ready so you can test it. Yeah, I think that's nice. So the next important thing is maybe we should press down and twist our brush a little, and that'll give us some nice edges. But you have to keep doing it. And the other important point is work out very quickly how many trees you're going to have. Keep it simple, else you can get confused. So I'm going to have maybe one, and then a little one here, and then a very little one here, because we want some variety, some highs and some lows. And then maybe I will make this one even higher. That's going to be my highest one, and then a slightly lower one here, like that. And then this bottom bit I'm going to brush across. So you see how I've been able to lower this riverbank. Cheating, really. And the important thing about this bank is you don't want one simple straight line across. It won't look natural. Yeah, and I think that's nice. Now I could soften these edges, and I might try to do that. What's making me hesitate here is this is already drying very quickly. So I will spray it a bit, and that helps a little bit. And then I dry my brush, and I'm just going to do that just to soften it a little. And the same with the other side, just soften it a little. And there's I don't know why, but there's a bit of a gap there, so let's just brush that. And there we go. That's looking quite nice. Let's leave it to dry. Ooh. I don't like that bit. Oh, there we go. Let's leave, oh, and maybe here. Now I'm getting fussy. You can even use the tissue, but it's a bit powerful to soften this edge, but it is very powerful, much more powerful than using the brush. There we go. And that looks very nice, doesn't it? Let's leave it to dry. Now we are going to paint the banks. So this is the first one we're going to paint. So basically it's just, we'll ignore this one. 1, 2 trees, and then this big one with no leaves. And then we've got this bank coming down here, and I might simplify that. So here we go. So this needs to be a strong mix. At the same time, the tops of the trees need to be lighter than the bottom ones, because they're the bottom of the trees, because the top is catching the sunlight, and so it's going to be a bit warmer, a bit lighter, and that means a bit more of a reddy purple. Luckily we've got our scrap paper so we can practice. So I think that's okay, but I just need more, a bigger mix. Okay, a bit redder. Okay, and then we need our push down and twist. Look at that. Compared to that, that's what we're looking for. Okay, so next we have to think about the height. So the first tree is about here, and the second one is here, and it's going to come down to here. So here we go. And remember, the hairs very quickly start coming together, and we don't want that. Not yet anyway, not for this top part. So really twist them. So you are probably damaging the brush doing this little by little, but these are very strong brushes and it gives you the effect that you're looking for. There, that's brilliant. Now this is drying very quickly, so I want to spray it. Spraying quite a lot, really getting it wet. Now we're going to do a thicker and darker wash. So more blue, more red, more blue. This needs to be a bit bluer in colour, and I'm going to apply that in quite a slapdash fashion. There we go. And now quickly I'm going to add that tree with no leaves. So I need a thickish mix, and it's going to be like a 1, 2. So let's try 1, and I'm doing it quickly, 2, because it gives you this lovely edge, this rough edge. So this is a bit different to the original tree I did, but doesn't matter. And then a few thick branches, and you have to be careful that they're not parallel, because that doesn't look natural, and that will ruin your painting if you do a bad tree. Made a mistake there, and I'm hiding it by doing that. Oh, that's looking quite nice. So then the next bit, maybe one more here, is to do lots of these. So here we go. This is where we go a little bit crazy, Oh, I should have had a few branches in here as well. A bit late for that. And this is drying super quick. So we haven't finished here, so I'm spraying like mad to keep this bottom bit wet. And here we go. Yeah, and watercolor painting, sometimes you have to move very quickly, but if you can keep things wet, it gives you more time. So the spray bottle really is a godsend. There we go. I'm really happy with that. So now let's do this bank, and I'm going to make it a bit warmer and light because it's the top of the bank we're doing first. And just have to think about we're going to have one bit here, and then we're going to have another one maybe about here, and that maybe came out a bit too far. And as we go into the distance, they're going to get smaller. So there is a bit of perspective there, and I might have that bank coming out like that. That's really nice. Sometimes it all comes together and sometimes it all falls apart. So now I'm doing a really dark mix, and let's check that. Yeah, already is dark. This bit's in shadow. Yeah, and then there might be something like that. There we go, and that gives a little feeling of grass, and we can spray that for a little bit of texture. And then we want to do some reflections in the water. So don't be too fussy with this. You want to try and keep the lines as horizontal as possible, but that can be tricky. Easier said than done, and I'm not too happy with that, so what I'm going to do is hide it. There you go, hiding that, and I'll have another go at that. Just do up here as well. So I'm doing a kind of zigzaggy pattern. Yeah, and I think that works. Just spray it one more time. Ideally, I would let this dry a little bit more and then spray it, but obviously that means you've got to wait for that, and that's a bit boring. So I'm just telling you what I would do. I'd let that dry for about another minute, and then when it's not completely dry, spray it one more time. And what I'd be hoping for is some little what would you say, little bits where the water has touched the paint and made the paint move, and it gives it a lovely texture. So please have a go at that. So that's looking quite nice. Let's leave it to dry. Now let's move on to this side, and having a look here, we've got a small tree and then a very big one, and we've got these power lines or utility poles, and of course the bank. So first of all, that slightly reddish mix, a little bit of blue, test it on our paper. Yeah, perfect. So again, press down and twist, and then here we go. and then big tree here. Okay, and then darker. Yeah, I'm quite happy with that. Just spray it quickly. Then get our liner brush and a dark mix for the branches, and here we go. Ah, that looks quite nice. And then very quickly, let's do this bank. So once again, we're beginning with a light red. Oh, and I might just spray this. And hopefully we'll get little speckles. Okay. That's very ready. Maybe too ready. Ah, no, that might do. Okay, here we go then. Wow, it does dry quickly. So we're going to have one there. And then another one here, a bit shorter. And then final one here. And yeah, I'm just having a look how well this works together. Maybe if this comes out a bit more, I think that will look better. Let's just spray that to keep it nice and wet. And make it a bit darker. Give it a dark edge here. There we go. And then we get our liner brush and okay, and then spray. Just blend that in a bit more, and that too, and that's looking good. One thing you can do, but it's a bit risky, is wet your brush and then flick like this. It will give you texture, but can be a bit too much. And if you don't like it, you can always erase it like this. But you might like these effects. I haven't done it over here sadly, but you might want to know this. So I'm just letting you see what you can do, and then you can have a go if you like. And of course you can spray as well, like that. Oh, and I forgot the power lines. Now because I made this shorter, it's going to be a bit more difficult. So power lines take a lot of courage. Yeah, because if you make a mistake, that's it. You can quickly perhaps wipe it out. So got one here. And that will do. I should perhaps make it thicker at the bottom by pressing down more. but that's quite tricky to do. And then maybe about here, going across, and then this, and then 1, 2, 3. Okay, there we go. And then we've got another one here. So here we go. Yeah, you really should practice this a few times on your scrap paper. These have come out okay. I've just been lucky this time, and also I've practiced a lot. You can also use a ruler and tilt it and then draw the line along the ruler, so that's a good technique too. In a future video I'll show you that if you want, just ask. And then we've got the cables. I'm going to practice these because they're going to have a dip like this. Yeah, this is where you get nervous. Yeah, good enough. And then here too, and then these disappear around the river bend, these wires, to another pole over here somewhere. Okay, and that will do. Oh, that's a big relief. And if you want to blend these a bit more, you can use your finger like that. Okay, there we go. That pole is a little bit wobbly, and perhaps we could go over it one more time. I'm not sure if I should try and do this, but so you see I've got my hand resting against the paper, so that gives me a little bit more control. And I'm pressing all the way down with the brush here at the bottom to make it wider, because these cables are wider at the bottom. Oh, and I made my mistake there, but I like that. I think it looks a bit more real now than before, and I have to do the same with this one now. Because it's closer, it has to look wider than the other one in the distance. Okay. Yeah. So like that. Oh, not too bad. Okay, next, the river. For the river, we are going to do these dry brush strokes across. So we definitely need some scrap paper for this. And let me see, I think I'm going to do it a light bluey purple colour. Let's see what we've got here. Yeah, I think that will work. So very quick strokes across. So remember, if they're not quick, it's not going to look like this rough brush stroke. It's going to be like that. A little like that is okay. And that's it, that's enough, because it's really easy to overdo this. Okay, maybe tiny bit more. Yeah, I think a bit more was a good idea. Okay, finished. And now for the rocks. So I don't want to do too many rocks because it will take a long time, but just to give you an idea, so first of all we're going to do like the tops of the rocks. So it's going to be a reddish colour again, warmish, and then when we do the bottom of the rocks it's going to be more of a bluey dark colour. So let's think about the arrangement. So we're going to have maybe one here and one here. So the important thing about rocks, they don't look very red on the top, do they? But that's okay. The important thing about rocks is that the arrangement is irregular, and the shapes too. That looks quite a lot like that one, so we don't want that. And also there is a perspective effect, so rocks in the distance are generally going to be a bit smaller. And I think just one more and then that's enough. So normally I make them redder at the top and bluer at the bottom, and I haven't been able to do that this time. But what I can do is I can use my liner brush and make a really dark mix, and this will be for the bottom and the reflection, and they're drying very quickly. So now if I can, I need to scrape out a bit with my fingernail. So you can use the thin part of your nail like a knife, or you can use like the flat part and just make a big mark, a thin mark like that, or a fat mark like that one. And then quickly let's do these reflections. Okay, and there we go. That actually looks nice, very nice. So let's leave that to dry. Now we are going to do this path here, and also possibly a path here, and maybe even the fence and a figure. But I think this time I'm going to put the figure over here, because this is my bigger area in this painting. So the way I made this path, is with my liner brush. So I wash it out thoroughly, then dry it a bit, and then I think about where my path is going to go. So about here and down here. So it needs to curve. And what you do is then you get the tissue and you wipe out, and you can start to see the path. Now you can really take your time with this and be very finicky. In watercolor painting, it's not really a good thing to be finicky. It normally leads to weak watercolor paintings. Most of the time you want to be bold. But this is one of those techniques where taking your time can really pay dividends. So there we go. And you can take as long as you want and be as careful as you like. I think I've got a bit of an impatient personality because I don't like to spend too long doing this, to be honest. but you can spend as long as you like, you really can. And then we've got another one here. The important thing is, and I should have said this before, you really need to make sure that these two banks look right. So you don't want this bank to be really high and this one to be super low. They have to balance, and this is especially true with this path. So we want this path here and this path here to begin at the same height on the paper, and you can use your brush like this and to come down, not quite the same point because this is longer, but almost. So there we go. And then and we've got a slightly curving path. And this one, because of the angle, is maybe curving a bit more tightly. This one a bit more gently, because of the perspective. Oh, and there we go. And you can experiment making this path a little bit wider. Can you see how I'm doing that? I'm just painting slightly above and then bringing it into the line, and then I wipe it away, and there we go. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but it's a really interesting technique which I discovered by accident. And then we can do a fence here. So partly I don't want to do this because it's going to take a lot of time and it's tricky. We have to think about the perspective and it's a bit detailed. So this is our first post. So you don't have to have a fence if you don't want one. And then I'm going to have another one here. First of all, you want to begin with really wide gap here, because this is going to get smaller and smaller. So it's getting smaller in height and it's getting smaller in distance. So I'm doing this very quickly, but you can take your time, and you can even use a pencil to give you an idea of where to put them, and if you make a mistake you can just erase it with a kneadable putty rubber like this. Even a normal eraser is probably okay, to be honest. Yep, it's actually looking fairly good, but remember these posts are going to also get not just smaller but thinner, so if possible make these closer ones a little bit thicker. Yeah, this is why I didn't want to paint a fence. A lot of things to think about. And then we've got this thing going across, right, and going up. Okay, yeah. So this is much easier than trying to leave this when you paint originally. Leave this as a white area, and also of course a white area, it would be too white, whereas this is an off-white, and that looks very good. Looks a lot better than pure white, which wouldn't look natural. Let's do a figure here. So let's think he's going to be about this high, and that's going to be the top of his head. It's a bit too wet. And his shoulder maybe about here, and maybe an arm here. Okay, can't see anything, so maybe I'll just remove the whole area. There we go, and that too. And then just quickly on this side, about the same height, going to about there. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you could spend a lot longer doing this, and you can make this even clearer, even whiter. But because I'm doing this for a video and I don't want it to be too long, I'm going through this fairly quickly, and then like this, and like this. It is working out remarkably well, actually. I'm quite surprised. Okay, there we go. Learning to paint a fence by wiping out paint. Now the final thing I'm going to do is this figure, which is the focal point of the painting. Now really the figure would probably be lost in the shadows of the trees, but I'm going to draw the figure out by doing some painting. So we've got this little outline that we've done, and after this has dried we can even strengthen the outline even more. I'm not going to do that, but you could. Because this is really just a demo painting. So there is a danger this is going to look a little bit unnatural because this figure is a bit too strong. So we just get our thumb and wipe him out. But be careful, I won't use that finger again, I'll use another one. And then another one. Like that. And if I want to go super strong, some tissue. That will really fade it out. And that is more acceptable. That works. And there we go. I forgot the birds. So let's have a little trinity here. So you can see the brush, it has a thin bit and a wider bit. And we want the thin bit, the blade part, for the birds. But then we can use the fat bit like that as well. You see that? And then the thin bit. And here we go again. The thin bit, the fat bit, and the thin bit again. And just one more. And can you see how that little detail, it's a tiny detail, makes these lovely birds. It's just a little thing, but it really makes them bird-like, and that's what you want. Okay, there you go. This is quite a complicated painting, and if you manage to paint this, you're doing really well. Please remember, trees are super difficult to paint. If you can paint a good tree in watercolor, it means you're already a pretty good watercolor artist. So I hope you have lots of fun. Please let me know.